Hello one and all, and welcome to Behind the Glass, your weekly automotive podcast hosted by two rather uninformed enthusiasts.
No.
I'm Sam from the YouTube channel Seen Through Glass.
I'm Tony from Gravelwood Car Sales.
And you can watch us each week on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and most podcast players. We hope you enjoy the episode. What do you make of this T-shirt?
Well, I mean, I did look you up and down a couple of times. I mean, I know you're a fan of him. And I know you like to let everyone know that you're a fan of him. But it's a bit much, that top.
For those of you who are listening, today I'm wearing a Michael Schumacher T-shirt. It's a new purchase. One I'm quite proud of. I'm a big fan of it. I'm wearing it because this morning, Paul and I recorded the latest episode of After the Checkered Flag.
Ah, got you.
Our F1 special series, which the video version sits exclusively on our Recast page. But you can get the audio versions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. So I wore this for a reason, but I'm now still happy to be wearing it because it's just Michael Schumacher's face on my T-shirt.
And you paid money for that?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. Almost too much, I got to be honest. It's a bit of a rip-off, but I still really like it. Anyway, mate, how are you? How are things? How was your week and your weekend?
Okay, not too bad.
Just okay?
Yeah.
Did your football team win anything?
No, they didn't win nothing.
Sore subject?
Yes, it's a very sore subject. Sorry. I would happily talk about anything else apart from my football team.
Well, let's do that. Any car chat? Did you get in any cars? Did you see any cars? Did you buy any cars?
I'm actually really, really low on stock at the moment.
Really?
I am really low, yeah. I'm having a little bit of a rejig in terms of the whole business. I'm having a bit of a... Because decent used car stock at the moment is still hard to find. Yeah, the prices have come off a bit, but nice, proper stuff, it's still hard to find. So we're just scaling back a little bit, to be honest.
Fair enough.
And then, but I am really, really short of stock.
What are you picking up or dropping off tomorrow?
Picking a Golf GTI up.
Okay.
And delivering a 718 GT4.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
What spec's the GT4?
Yeah, GT Silver, ceramics.
Ooh.
Nice car.
Manual or PDK?
PDK, of course.
I think, actually, I'm going to come out and say it. I think the PDK is better for the GT4.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing as well. If you have a GT4 at the moment and you're thinking about selling it, give me a ring because I'd like to buy it because they've stopped making them now.
Yeah.
And the demand for them at the moment is slow. I mean, a bit of that will be because we're coming into spring and we've said it so many times on here that if you've got 80 to 100 grand to spend on a bulletproof sports car, there it is. You know, you don't really get much better than a GT4. So, but they're good news at the minute.
By them killing off the GT4, finishing the GT4, does that mean that the new Cayman Boxster is imminent?
Well, they say it's going to be an electric car, right?
Yep.
That's what they're saying.
Yep.
I think this is a very, very dangerous move from Porsche because the Boxster Cayman range is so popular, and like for sports car, it's an entry level into their brand, which means petrol heads. Now, petrol heads in general, because they like noise, like us and stuff, not really going to go out and buy they all kicked off when they put the 4-pot 2-litre turbo engine in it. So what are they going to do with the electric car? So unless they're doing it obviously to compete with companies like Jaguar now, where they're going full electric and other brands, I think it's a dangerous move, and I think they'll bring another little combustion engine sports car out.
Yeah,
There's a big market for them.
I am really excited by the idea of an electric Boxster or Cayman, or at least an electric small sports car from Porsche. I think that could be super cool because, as we've spoken about before, a lot of the electric vehicles more recently have gone towards range, practicality. We haven't had too many sporty electric vehicles since the Taycan, the RS e-tron GT, etc. So I'm really intrigued and excited by the concept of an electric Boxster or Cayman. I think you could be right that there might still be a combustion engine or at least a hybrid offering. I don't know how Porsche would do it, because I'm assuming to make a proper electric baby sports car, you need to develop it from ground up.
Yeah.
And so therefore you couldn't just swap in a combustion engine or swap in a battery power. I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, if you look at the Taycan and the Panamera, they are two completely different cars. They've got the technology Porsche now because they're VW Audi Group, and they have got the Taycan, and there's a new Macan coming, by the way. So with a claimed 300 odd mile range.
Well, okay, so this is now we're going to get very crossed with our wires. I heard that the Macan was essentially Taycan tech.
Well, I'm sure it will be. I don't know that, but I'm sure it will be, because why wouldn't it be? It would be silly for them to invent a load of new tech. But they've upgraded the batteries and stuff, so it will do more range, because we know a Taycan does 220 miles max on a charge, whereas they're claiming that the new Macan will do 300 plus.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. I think the Cayman box thing is just a bit more interesting and exciting. And you said maybe they're doing it as an answer to Jag going electric, but I think it's Porsche's own statement that they've said that they are pushing forward for EV. I can't remember the percentage numbers off the top of my head of what they claim or they want their product range to include, but it's hugely EV moving forward. So the fact that the the Cayman Boxster would be the first to move makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think what they've obviously done as well, these manufacturers are under huge pressure from governments worldwide to make a certain amount of electric cars to get their emissions down, as in, the output of what they deliver in terms of petrol versus electric. Take the making part out of it, the actual what the cars emit when they leave the factory. So they're under huge pressure, and Porsche have probably looked at it and think, right, well, that model's going to have to be electric now, that have to be electric, that car can, GT cars can still be petrol, and I think all the manufacturers doing the same thing.
This is an Evo article which says that Porsche is targeting 80% of its sales to be EVs by 2030.
Fair.
The new Macan will be the first of these new electric cars when it arrives next year, to be followed by electric 718 Cayman and Boxster models in 2025.
I just find it really, really interesting that Porsche are going down this way. And we've seen Volkswagen, Audi doing the same thing. When in the background, they're still pushing for this synthetic fuel, which we know about.
But their argument makes sense and is logical, that from Porsche's side, synthetic fuel is for heritage fleet and for motorsport and track day experiences.
Yeah.
Their push for their own future products is still too electric. They're not
the retail stuff.
Yeah, they are not saying that synthetic fuel is for their mass future plans. Okay, that's 80% of sales by 2030, so there's still 20%, which is like to be GT department or GT products. Maybe that's where they're angling, or they're thinking, okay, fine, that's how we'll keep combustion engines alive, but the rest is electric. And they've come up and said that. So I don't think it's completely like you're saying one thing and doing something else. I think it's great that they're investigating both strategies.
Of course.
And I say, I just personally, I am excited. I'm keen now for the electric sports cars, with all the learnings and technology that we've seen progress the standard EVs, which we agree are getting better and better. I like the idea of a little fast electric sports car.
Yeah, I mean, the market hasn't got one, has it?
Not since the Tesla Roadster.
No.
Or what was the original Tesla? Was it called a Tesla Roadster originally?
Yeah, how much was that though? That was a few quid as well, wasn't
the first one, the Lotus one.
Yeah, I can't
remember
what
a lot
it
of money?
was called. Well, I'm sure it would have been as an investigation car. Did they make it?
Yeah. You could go and buy it. That was their first car.
Fair.
Original Tesla Roadster. Let's see what the price was. Original Tesla Roadster price. Anyone on the live chat know the price of the original? Okay, it started at $100,000 in the US.
Yeah, well, we know what this Cayman's going to be then, don't we? Did you see as well, while we're talking about fuels in general, did you see Toyota coming out with hydrogen?
Yes, hydrogen combustion.
Yeah.
They're saying that that's their route, which is super interesting. So last year I went down to AVL, who are incredible, I don't know what you'd call them, engineering company based in Austria that do a lot of this kind of stuff. And we did a whole piece for Autosport around hydrogen combustion.
Yeah, so it'd be an engine supplied with hydrogen fuel.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah, and expensive.
Yeah. And volatile is probably a cliched thing to say, but it does have certain elements that need to be sort of finessed.
Yeah.
The question was, can you make them as powerful? Can they perform as highly? AVL said yes, they were developing a motorsport specific hydrogen combustion engine.
Yeah.
Toyota said that they're very happy with their results.
Yeah.
It does theoretically make sense because you literally, you can keep the combustion engine learnings that we've had over the last 100 years, but just fuel them differently, fuel them with green and clean hydrogen. So I get it. I think it's, I don't see that as the sole solution.
No, me too. And I think we got to keep an eye on cost as well, because they were really, like the cost was really inflated compared to a combustion car, and mainly that. And I didn't know this until I watched, but they said because of the pressure in a hydrogen engine is far greater than a combustion engine, which means all the parts are under so much more stress, which means they have to reinforce them essentially, which obviously costs more money, and the tanks as well, because it's loads more flammable apparently because of the pressure. So
that's the volatility, which they. And I wish I could remember, but they did have a sort of simple answer. It's a sort of very specific criteria to create a sort of explosion.
Yeah.
So it's not literally like you're driving around a bomb, which is often the sort of cliched argument with anything hydrogen. It's like, we're just driving around a bomb. It's not as dangerous as that, but there are areas where it is dangerous. Yeah. Anyway, on Sunday I put out my video with the M3 Touring.
Which is proper petrol.
Proper
horsepower.
We sound like such old men. But yeah, so I actually drove that car a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
But my video just went live. M3 Touring, a car that we have discussed quite a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
Over the last year or so, but I finally got behind the wheel of. As we suspected, it's an M3.
Great car.
With a boot.
Yeah.
But my God, what a good boot. And such a practical car. That latest generation 3 Series Touring, okay, you might have some purists being like, well, it's just too big now. It's the same size as a 5 Series. Like, it's massive. But who cares? That is what the 3 Series is today.
Is it though, really? Is it the same size as an older 5 Series?
Probably, from like 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. Yeah.
I don't know.
Same as everything.
Yeah, everything's just getting bigger.
Yeah.
But it is a lovely, lovely car to live with.
Yeah. My
question is, as ever, is the real pick of the bunch the M Lite? Is the M340i actually the car that anyone should ever need or want?
Well, yes and no. I think you half hit the nail on the head, because I literally done a post the other day because I got one in stock and said, why in your right mind would you spend nearly double the money on a car which, is faster, it obviously does brake better, but how fast can you go on the road? I don't know, mate. There's just a very different feeling. It's almost like what's wrong with an A6 compared to an RS6. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just a really special... It's like, what's wrong with a Range Rover Sport? It's all the car you could ever want, and then everyone goes to buy the SVR.
It's an amazing power that brands have or have created in these performance departments, right? Because not only are the regular products so good, or the M Lite products, and we have it with RS and S line, we have it with AMG and AMG Lite or whatever they're calling it. So it's from the 63 to the 53 or the 55. It's just sort of mind-boggling, because I spec'd up both cars how I would, and there was a 30 grand difference. And apart from the fact of just knowing I've got a cooler car, I couldn't think why on earth or how I could ever justify the extra 30 grand on the M3.
Yeah. I mean...
But you want the M3 because it's an M3.
Yeah, and as well, like, the depreciation would probably be similar as well, as in they'd all fall similarly together. So it's not as though you drive it straight out and then it's the same value as a 340i. You know what I mean? So you're not losing that 30 grand, but yeah, you're right. It is another 30 grand at least. And is it 30 grand better of a car? I mean, well, that's a matter of an opinion. You know, some people go, well, yeah, because it's got this suspension, it's got this brakes, and it's got a proper diff, and it's got this, and it's got that. Fair enough. But for some people, which is why they make these M light cars and these AMG light cars, the big cars wasted on them. As in, the other cars, you're right, are perfectly fine.
And this is my big question, right? So if you're watching us live on Recast, please get involved in the chat here because I'd be loving to know some of your feedback. But if you have a super fast, everyday or family car, so yeah, M3 Touring, RS4, Urus, Cayenne Turbo GT, etc., how often are you driving it fast? And I mean Sport or Sport Plus mode or M mode, everything turned up to 10 and you're thrashing it down a twisty road. Because my theory is you are therefore buying your fast family car more so for its badge and the idea of its abilities and the status and how it makes you feel and everything. But 99% of the time, you're cruising in that car.
Yeah.
At which point you could have or should have saved the money and bought the one down that's going to give you just as much performance the 90% of the time. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are buying fast estates and fast SUVs and thrashing them all the time.
But I think as well, it depends in where you live in the world. Because don't forget, these cars are made for worldwide.
Sure.
They're not made just for us, unfortunately. But everyone drives, as we know, everyone drives differently all around the world. And everyone has different parameters for what they want from a car.
But surely it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you are buying a practical car, an estate or an SUV, you're doing it because you need the practicality. Otherwise, you're just going to get an M4, aren't you? So if you're buying an estate or an SUV, you need the practicality for extra seats for people or extra space to carry stuff around. And when you've got all those people and all that stuff, you are not driving it like a coupe. You are not taking it out for your Sunday drive. You're instead using it for its practical ways. And therefore, it's a question I'm asking myself.
Can give you, not about asking yourself, I can give you another good reason why they make the two. One, because it's hugely profitable for the manufacturers.
Of course.
Because the cost difference between making an M340i and an M3 is not much difference. Like, despite what some people, it's pennies, mate. Obviously, there won't be much difference.
Really?
Honestly, I
developed an M product car doesn't cost the manufacturer that much.
I cannot tell you how much money there is in manufacturing. It's honestly mind-blowing. And what people have to understand, so you take Ferrari, for instance, right? Turnover 5 billion a year, something like that, make £1 billion. So they've got 20% profit, something like that, right? But that's after all their costs. That's after everything that's come out, all the marketing, all the money they spend throughout the year. So the actual cost to make the metal, to make the actual
The production,
car,
sure, but the development surely has cost to it.
but that's all in that cost. It's all in it. Honestly, it's huge, you know. And my best friend's in manufacturing, or he doesn't manufacture cars, but he's in manufacturing. And some of the stuff he tells me, and cars will be no different. Manufacturing is manufacturing.
I'm with you. The bit that I would love to understand or question is, if a manufacturer tells you it costs us £1 million to make this new model, £100 million to make this new model, how much of that is R&D and how much is that production? Because I would agree that if you've got a £100 million budget for a car, maybe 80 or 90 is on getting it to the production level, and then the final 10 is actually the production. Do you see what I mean? Like, I would assume and I would agree that the actual production part is very cheap, but surely developing an M3 costs money for a manufacturer.
You know what they do there? You know what they do there, which is very, very clever. And Porsche, they all do it, right? So then they have pre-production cars, which you know about. That's what they do. So what they do is, on paper, them pre-production cars are like £1 million a car, and they throw them away. They can't do anything with them.
Yeah.
But that comes off their bottom line. That all comes out the bottom line. So when you look at their accounts, all of that's already factored in. It's already done. So the short of it is, is that manufacturers do not make BMW M3s that they charge 80 or 90,000 quid for, and it's cost them 70,000 quid to make.
Okay.
They go backwards. They honestly, I've said it before. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is, you'd be absolutely astounded what the actual flat cost would be, because it's all written off. It's all written down. And like I said, you've got the pre-production cost. So yeah, you're right. You'd say, for instance, it's 100 million quid to develop an M3, right? Well, they'll have lots of pre-production cars dotting around. Well, they spread that 100 million quid over the course. So they're gone because they throw them cars away. They're not allowed to be on the road. Course, yeah. So I find it fascinating, me, about
For sure.
how they operate and stuff.
I will try in our new quest to get to the bottom of some of the questions that we ask on the podcast. I'll reach out to a few contacts and see if we can get some numbers, some production numbers, costs for some of these cars, because they probably will be a bit shy and shifty about it. But I'm sure I could get they're not going to give me price per car, but they might give us some implication of cost or cost of development. Because, for example, remember there was that famous story that Bugatti were always losing money for every Veyron that they sold. Yeah. Because of the cost of development for that vehicle. Yeah. So that's an example of
not making
the reverse, is that you said the actual building of the car probably wasn't expensive, but all the R&D to get there was so hugely expensive, then they only sold a certain number. But
and they wouldn't have tens of pre-production cars that they could write the money off.
Yeah, but there's still the cost of the money. Like, don't forget, they're writing the money. I know accountancy, etc., but there is still a cost. It doesn't matter if they're writing it away. There's still a cost.
Huge cost.
But I don't question why the manufacturers do it at all. It makes total sense to make every variation of M3 possible. But why do we as buyers find that M3 so attractive when we probably don't actually need the M3 part?
I can answer it.
Why?
Because most of the time these family cars are for more than one person. So if you buy an M3, it's all the car you could ever want for a family. There are a few quid, yeah, they're right, but your missus can drive it. She's going to drive it 30 mile an hour. You're going to drive it sensibly because it's loaded up with all the kids. But that time where it's not loaded up with all the kids and your missus ain't driving it and you want to go out and drive it, then you can drive it like a 911. And that's why they make them.
Yeah.
That I would think that is the sole, and because they can. And
yeah, I'm not knocking the manufacturer making them. I'm just asking why we, as people, convince ourselves that it's worth the 30 grand more. That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, well, that example there, which I've just said to you, is very true. And I can back that up by saying a man bought an A45 off me, an A45S off me at the weekend. He's part exchanged a new shape Vantage V8 because his wife won't drive the V8 Vantage. So they bought a more practical car that his wife's going to drive around at 30 mile an hour, because you can, an A45S, you could drive it around at poodling it around. Why didn't they buy the A35? Because that's just as good at poodling around. Sure. Because when he wants to get on it and drive more briskly, the 45 is more rewarding than the 35.
And it's just more attractive. We just want the best one, don't we?
We want the best one.
We're suckers for marketing.
Correct.
Because just to keep bashing home this BMW message, the 340i is already quick and capable enough.
The 330i M Sport is all the car you'd ever want.
For most roads around the world, most public roads around the world, just as, it's so damn good.
Brilliant.
But we, as suckers for marketing and as idiots and as petrol heads, go, oh yeah, we won the M3. I'll pay 30 grand more just to get an ugly grille and better suspension and a torquier engine. And
Don't be like that. Ugly grille. It's a great looking car.
No, I do actually really like the way the car looks now. But just to check in on the live chat, Keith's just come in saying, we want crazy SUVs and M3 Tourings for bragging rights. If you can best the next guy when he turns left or when the light turns green, that's worth the extra 30k. I mean, I think you're right. It's about feeling better. If you can afford it, you want the better thing, don't you? Which, even though you don't need it, you just kind of stretch yourself, which is a bit ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on, because I had a fascinating few days at the weekend, heading to Italy and spending some time with Lamborghini. Now, this wasn't a direct result from the very dodgy episode that we put out a few weeks ago, where we spoke cluelessly about the Revuelto. But I did talk to the guys at Lambo, guys and girls, so I should say, at Lambo, about the car and about that episode. First things first, the first and I think most important thing for me to say about the Revuelto.
Uh-huh.
I fit in it.
Right.
That for me, like immediately, I'm like proper car.
But did you
Proper car.
But did you really didn't fit in the old one?
I genuinely did not fit in the old one.
Right.
So I'm 6'2", and in the old Aventador, and you could see in the Ultimate video, if I sit up straight, comfortably in those seats, my head hits the roof lining, and also the top of the windscreen is below my level of sight. So I have to really like duck myself or submarine myself into the seats in the Aventador.
So it's a higher car now than the older car.
The roof line is higher, the seats sit lower. It's a more comfier cabin. They have made the cabin space better.
Have they raised the car?
No.
The car is still the same size as the old car.
I don't know the actual height. Let's Google that right now. But they've just made the cabin layout and space much better. Revuelto height. That's going to be a weird fact. They've also made the entrance, what's called the ingress and regress to the car.
Ingress and regress.
Yeah. Getting in and out of the car easier.
Right.
Revuelto height. Let's see.
And do you still sort of fall into it?
Height 1160. Remember that 1160. 1160.
I'll remember that.
It's 24 millimeters higher than the Aventador.
Okay.
You get into it. You probably get into it. It's very easy to get in and out of.
The old one had a bit of a lip, didn't it?
It's got so they've basically got rid of that, so it makes it easier to get in and out of. They've copied over the passenger display from Ferrari in that side, so now the passenger's got one of those little displays on the dashboard. The interior is very nice, though. The interior is really nice. It still looks Lambo-like, but it's just taken a big step forward. The big touch screen, things like that. Lots of the functionality is in the screens. Still some buttons on the steering wheel, thank God. But it's a comfortable place to sit compared to the Aventador. So that was my initial impression straight away. Was like, cool,
good.
Cool. It has loads more presence in the flesh. Loads more presence
than the old car.
Than the old car, but then also than photos would have allowed. I think in photos, rightfully so, a lot of people said, "Oh, it just looks like the Technica, looks like a facelift Huracan," and that front end is very Technica. But the minute you see it from any other angle, you're like, "Oh, that's a big car. And it's got big and present. It sits super low and it goes on for ages." I actually saw some moving around on the
bigger
factory
than the old
floor.
car. Then bigger than the old.
Yeah,
car?
It's got real presence. It's got real presence. A lot more angle, many more fins going on than you would realise. So, big front boot as well. Bigger front boot. Aventador was never awful for its front boot, but
it wasn't great though, mate. The Spider basically didn't have anything.
Yeah, they really have focused on livability.
Right.
They claim to have taken a lot of the feedback from the customers of like how tough it was to live with and use an Aventador on a regular basis,
right?
And tried to attract that, like all these manufacturers have done. Every single supercar manufacturer have, tried to make their cars easier to live with.
Well, more usable. And
More
I'll tell you why that is, because in general, over the last 10 years, people use their supercars more now. The mileages on supercars, I mean, it's not uncommon for you to see a 5-year-old supercar with 10,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Well, because they are easier to do so you can use them
correct.
more often.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sort of mechanics, the engineering, the technicalities. Where you/I were completely wrong. It is really ground up. It is an entirely new car. I asked the man who was the head of Revuelto what carried over, what's the percentage. He literally could not think of one component that had carried over from Aventador. He was like, I guess the technology of the carbon fiber is similar. Like it's ground up new, entirely new. What do they call it? Carbon monofuselage. I like that word. It's a tub. It's a tub, but it's more than the tub.
I thought a fuselage was an aeroplane.
Yeah. Carbon monofuselage, which is very, very cool. The thing which is really interesting, which I didn't realize I knew, and again shows how naive and idiotic we were being a few weeks ago, the layout for the powertrain is quite fascinating. You've got the hunking great V12, which is just massive, obviously sitting where it always has in the middle. But then at the front, you have the front motor for the hybrid powertrain, and the actual battery pack sits underneath the sort of central tunnel.
Runs all the way up. I knew that, yeah. Runs all the way up the car.
I saw that being developed at AVL, the company I was mentioning earlier, in Austria last year when I visited. They were building this tunnel thing, and they said, look, we've got this project for an Italian sports car manufacturer. And
They didn't tell you?
No, because they really couldn't. They gave me every hint without saying. I surmised at the time that it was Lambo, but I thought it was for a much smaller project, or that's what they insinuated.
Yeah.
But they said it's really revolutionary to position the battery pack like this. And when you see it all laid out, because in the factory, Lambo have a sort of skeleton. They've got the carbon monofuselage and then the powertrain all unskinned, and you can kind of see the layout of the vehicle, and it's super impressive. And it makes sense. You go, because usually a lot of these supercar manufacturers will put the battery pack behind the rear seats, sort of, transversely along the vehicle.
Because of the weight, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, so it's a really clever system. And then the big thing, which you said would be a disaster for when someone drives into the back of the vehicle, is the gearbox, which is super clever. Tiny packaged gearbox, which actually houses the secondary electric motor inside the gearbox, which is super clever. So no reverse gear, electronic reverse gear.
Yeah.
And that packaging, I say, just again looks really tight, really small, really clever.
But it is at the back of the engine.
Yeah, but you said there have been so many cars with gearboxes hanging out the back, and you don't think they would have built a crash structure or set that car up to protect it from... and if somebody drives into the back of your car and smashes up the rear, you're in bigger trouble than just your gearbox. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you're there going, oh, what an idiot. Well, if someone crashes into your Revuelto, then your gearbox is going to be screwed. I think they would have thought of that. But what I thought was interesting is when it comes to their hybrid technology, they're taking the same methodology or theory as McLaren with the Artura. It is not there really for any electric driving functionality. It's purely to aid and boost performance.
Okay.
It's at like 12-mile range, if that. They're like, it's really like, we don't expect people to be driving around in electric mode. We don't really want them to. It's all about aiding the performance. And then, of course, you've got all the other things which we knew about. Yeah, the dual clutch gearbox, which obviously should improve, the four-wheel steer, all those elements. Which
the older models had four-wheel steer, though. It's only the original Aventador that didn't.
Yeah. So lots of things that should make it...
because it's a big car, right?
It's a big, heavy car. It's heavier than the Aventador.
Yeah,
of course, as you would expect.
Yeah.
But I think what I took away from it is, until we drive it, we won't know. Whilst it may still share those characteristics, and I spoke to a few journalists who were on the trip with me, we all agreed Aventador is not a car to drive on the twisty mountain roads.
Yeah.
And Revuelto, as good as it might be, will probably have the same vibe.
Yeah.
But where I think they will have really improved it is that usability and livability factor.
Yeah.
So whilst it might still be heavy and long and really fast to enjoy on the tighter and twister roads that would suit a GT4 or a smaller, lighter car.
Or any other supercar that you can buy.
Or a 296 GTB, for example. Yeah.
Most of the supercars you can buy.
Or a Huracan.
Yeah.
But...
SF90, because
there's not really many cars like the Revuelto in terms of length, size, a powertrain, all that stuff. But where they have focused, is that usability, and I think it sounds like, or it feels like they've done an amazing job in that area.
Yeah.
So that you can drive the cars more often.
Well, we're going to see that when we start steering them around.
Yeah, seeing them out and about.
Yeah.
So probably still in city centres, shooting flames out there.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But yeah, no, it was very, very cool. Great to see. I saw 3 or 4 different specs creeping around in the factory, still in very early pre-production phases. It's amazing when you go into these production lines for these manufacturers. You spoke about it a little bit earlier with production costs and things like that. It's more the thing that amazes me rather than the cost of it all is the processes and how automated or thought through and the amount of stations. And for example, the Revuelto line is an all new line for Lamborghini.
That would have cost a small fortune to do that, by the way.
They've had to increase space and size and different elements for the battery units and all these different things. And when I was there, they're still working through those processes. So they have 3 or 4 vehicles on the line and they're teaching themselves, they're educating themselves, all the things that could go wrong, what to watch out for, what happens at each stage, checking the different systems. And that blew my mind because we went from brand new Revuelto line that they're still figuring out to the Urus line, which... oh my God.
Like a conveyor belt.
Mate, it was like a sausage factory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know 50% of Lamborghini's vehicles they produce are Uruses?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. The same as when you look at Porsche, it's the same. They're a Cayenne and Macan.
It's an SUV company now.
Yeah.
It's an SUV company, and they literally are churning these Uruses. So yeah, you got 50% are Urus, about 35% a Huracan, leaving 15%.
Correct.
Thank you for a Revuelto. And they're actually going to be stepping up. So previously they made about 5 Aventadors a day. They're hoping to step up to 7 Revueltos. But yeah, it's but how many factory tours have you done for supercar manufacturers? Okay, take your time.
No, I don't think
It's not like we're live.
No. I don't think I've done one. I was thinking.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think I've.
You've never been inside one?
Not a. I'm just trying to think if I had, whether I had
Ferrari?
for work or no. I've not been to Ferrari.
McLaren?
No, not into
Porsche?
the factory. No.
Oh, mate, we need to line this up.
Yeah,
You would. It is.
I'm pretty sure.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't. Not car factory.
Oh, you would love it.
Yeah.
You would love it. It is incredible. And if you want to be sold on a product quickly, go on a factory tour. Because I literally was walking around that Lambo factory going, yep.
No.
I'm buying a Urus.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this is amazing. Because you start to appreciate and understand what goes into making these vehicles, the level of detail, the processes. You see them at such a raw, rough stage, seeing them come together, all the amazing different specs, the interior room, the dynamic stage. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
A lot of STOs still being made, by the way.
Which is frightening.
I didn't realise. They're still making, they're still a
I thought they'd finished.
I thought they'd finished. There's still loads of STOs coming through. Yeah. I mean,
see any Technicas being made?
Yeah, saw lots of Technicas, saw some Steratos.
Right.
I think I mainly saw STOs, Technicas and Steratos. I didn't see many Spiders, to be fair.
And Urus.
Urus S and Urus Performante. Saw tons of them. Some really nice specs. Some Ad Personam, which is their, bespoke speccings.
Because they make 6,000 or 7,000 of them a year. Urus.
More.
Is it more now?
Yeah. I think it's around 8,000 a year.
8,000 Urus.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, because they make similar numbers, as in terms of factory. They make similar numbers to Ferrari, 10, 11,000, that sort of.
Let's try and fact check ourselves. How many Urus are made each year?
I thought it was 6 last year.
They did say, because it depends, because they said obviously when they dropped down on the amount of V12s they're making with the Aventador. It's all done with percentage. That's all they gave me. They just said it's percentage. So let's go. How many Lamborghinis were sold a year?
It was 10 or 11,000, I think, or 9,000, something like that.
Oh, you're right. 2022, you're right. It was 5,300.
Yeah.
They sold 9,000. Okay, so you're probably right. I must have got the number wrong. They sold 9,000 cars last year. So he must have said it was around 8,000 and it's 20%. Sorry, 50% of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
I only know because they make very, very similar numbers to Ferrari now.
Fine. Yeah, 2021 was 8,500.
Yeah.
Anyway, mind-boggling.
They used to be like 3,500, 4,000 cars, Lambo. That was,
And the Urus, I mean, literally, they doubled the size of the factory.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable the amount of money they put into that. And even the carbon fiber is all made in-house now. And they doubled the size of that department for the new Revuelto, because the Revuelto's got extra additional carbon fiber parts. Loads of new sort of carbon fiber tech. They're pretty sensitive around their carbon fiber tech, actually. It was one of the areas of real no camera kind of zone.
Really?
Yeah, very,
I didn't want you to know.
No, they gave us a full tour, but it was all just very much like,
Does that come from F1? Carbon fibre, didn't it?
The technology, for sure.
Yeah.
But didn't it not originally come from aerospace?
Possibly, but I know that F1 in terms of into cars.
Yeah, for sure, in terms of the usability in the automotive sector. But I was there because Lamborghini, like so many manufacturers, are celebrating a big birthday. It's their 60th anniversary this year.
60, is it?
60 years. So this was a chance to basically learn a little bit more about the history, understand a bit more about the brand, and then get behind the wheel of some heritage vehicles. So we did the whole factory tour, did a bit of a history lesson. I learned some cool stats. Like, I didn't realize, for example, that Ferruccio Lamborghini was actually quite old by the time I set up Lamborghini as a car maker. He was a successful guy. I think he was like 50 years old or something like that.
But didn't he want to buy a Ferrari and they said no, and he walked up on my own car?
It's a bit of a myth, that. It's a bit of a myth.
Okay.
He was churning the tractors with the tractor company. Also had a heating company or something like that, or like an air conditioning company. And he owned 2 250 GTs, I think. And supposedly he went for this meeting with Enzo. and within a short period after that said, I'm going to go and make my own car. But no one really knows what happened in that meeting. There's no proof that they had some big argument or that Enzo told them to jog on or anything like that. It's just been, that's become a bit of a legend. But yeah, he set out to make, the original idea was the ultimate Dolce Vita GT car. So that 350 GT, which is a beautiful car, is a finessed version of what he was driving, a 250 kind of GT. But then the company basically redefined itself when you got the Miura and then the Countach. It then became the ultimate supercar company. Yeah. But he sold up real quick. He was out of there by the mid-1970s, so literally like 10 years later.
Right.
Because...
Got his money and...
No.
Didn't get his money?
The tractor company got an order from, I think, the Bolivian government. So let's say they were making 3,000 tractors a year. They got an order for an additional 3,000 tractors from the Bolivian government. I think it's Bolivia. Feel free to correct me in the comments. And then there was a coup d'etat in Bolivia. A new government came in and said, oh yeah, we don't want these tractors. Sorry, whatever the other government said, I don't care. But Ferruccio Lamborghini built an entirely new factory. He'd like expanded his line. He'd hired loads of people. So he suddenly got left.
Done his money.
With 3,000 tractors. And so because it was just him, he was the sole owner of the company, he had to sell off loads of assets to cover up the cost of the additional 3,000 tractors.
Right.
And that was included selling off Lamborghini. So initially he sold half the business. Then he got fully out because he literally, so he was, okay, fine, an older man by that point, approaching 70 years old. So coming to the end of his working career anyway, but sold out real quick.
Yeah, man.
Which is kind of mad. But then, as we know, the company went through 1,000 different owners and a kind of crazy checkered history until Audi got involved, but always stayed true to that kind of ideology of the Miura and the Countach of ultimate super or poster cars.
Well, they still do it now, don't they?
Still do it now.
You know, they've done it with the Revuelto and the Technica and the STO. But fire breathing, big engine cars.
And that's it for me. That is what's most impressive. We've definitely touched on it before. The fact that Lamborghini continue to stay truest to their identity of all the supercar manufacturers. Porsche now make a million different products and, as we know, are way more of an SUV company than a sports car company.
Yeah.
And diluting a lot of their
But so are Lambo, as you just said.
Production-wise, yes. But the point I made, and I included some of this in my content, the Urus is way more a Lamborghini than the Cayenne is a Porsche, I think, in the sense where Lamborghini have always made supercars. Mm-hmm. Wild, crazy, out there, poster car supercars for lots of money for the specific person. You're a Lambo guy or gal.
Yeah.
Whilst Porsche changed their entire brand identity with the Cayenne and the Macan, opening them up to a completely different audience. It's a mass product.
Yeah.
They sell them by the absolute bucket load.
Of course.
Whilst the Urus is still relatively small numbers, 5,000 a year, it's still fairly small.
Yeah.
And we can see on the used market, the values are just
still strong,
super, super strong.
Yeah.
So that was what I was aware of, and it blows my mind that they're managing to stay true to that. So yeah, we went about an hour away from the factory with almost every model from their past. So they had a 400 GT, which is the follow-up to then a Miura, Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, Aventador, Manuel Gallardo, a Yalpa, which was their sort of early V8 car.
A Yalpa?
Yeah, Yalpa.
Yalpa?
Yeah, had a V8 Yalpa.
Oh, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, 2+. I didn't know about it either. It was, so what I also quite like is that all of their lines have heritage. So the V10 line basically came from the early V8 line, which was the Yalpa. The SUV follows on from the LM002. The V12s have always had the V12. So they've got history and heritage in every department. So I had been offered or invited to drive the LM002 and the Urus Performante. So that video is coming soon. But at the end of the day, I got back and all the other journalists had finished doing what they did. And they said, the Miura SV is available. If you want to go and have a quick drive in that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to come all the way to Italy with Lamborghini and be offered to drive in a €4 million Miura SV and say no. So as the sun was setting, I went for this drive in arguably one of the most iconic supercars ever made, if not the original.
And did you base your whole video around that in the end? Was it a separate one?
No. It's tacked on at the end. But Miura mean anything to you at all?
I know what it is, mate, and I appreciate it. But apart from that, no.
Really?
Not interested.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm a Ferrari guy, mate.
Okay, so if there was
a Porsche man.
If you walked into a car park and there was a Miura and a Daytona, you're going to go to the Daytona?
100%.
Really?
Of course, yeah.
No.
Yeah, because I'm a Ferrari man. If you ask a Lambo, if you ask Paul what he'd go to, I'll go to the Miura.
No, he wouldn't.
He's a Lambo fan.
He wouldn't. It's too old.
Yeah.
But the Miura is different. The Miura you can appreciate and respect as not because of the Lambo side of it. For what it represents, it arguably was the original supercar.
Yeah, and fair enough. But if you're not, I'm not that invested in like. I owned a Performante, which was a great car. I don't miss it. It was a great car, and I'm glad I experienced the Lambo thing. But I'm not a Lamborghini man. You know, I prefer Ferrari and Porsche. So I know more about them brands because that's what I like.
And I think you definitely have to be, or there is a certain Lamborghini person, right?
Yeah.
That's what I found interesting is I'm the same as you. You know, it's not my brand. But as time goes on, I appreciate them more and more.
Yeah.
For the fact that they stay true to what they are.
Yeah.
That you know what their products are. That they are just hilarious fun. And whilst you don't often tend to see a Ferrari collector and a Porsche collector have Lamborghinis in his stable. You know, Lamborghini people are their own people. So I don't know why exactly that is, because when you get up close to it and learn, the history is amazing. The products are kind of fantastic.
Yeah, there are. But I mean, the history's amazing from BMW, Audi and Mercedes as well, by the way. You know, all these brands, and there'll be loads of people out there that it's the same with the German brands, the three big German brands. You're either an Audi fan, a Merc fan or a BMW fan. And they all argue about which one's the best. I think they're all fantastic. But if I had to pick today which one I'd have, I'd still go BMW M.
Interesting.
Me personally.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I had a few of them when I was younger, and they are still, like, out of them three manufacturers, the driver's car, which they are. The BMW M car is the driver's car out of the other two brands. The other two are very good, and you can't really split hairs, and they have lost their exclusivity and a little bit of specialness now compared to the old days, but they're all very good nowadays. And you say that about supercars as well. You know, no one, whether I like Lambo or not, no one makes a bad car anymore. They're all very good. Even McLaren doesn't make a bad car. It doesn't work very often. Same with Aston Martin. They're all very, very good now. Everyone makes a great car now. It's just what you like.
Absolutely. No, that's fine. But I just thought in terms of history and importance in the automotive world, like there are some cars which I'm not like fussed about. I'm not sitting there, I dream of driving one or own it, but I respect it for what it is. And yeah, Miura for me has just always been like the originator. It's beautiful, the engine, what it stands for, what it represents, all those cars and those manufacturers you spoke about. Like, I don't think Ferrari would have chased the mid-engined supercar formula or felt that they had to respond to anything that was going on the other side of, 10 miles away without the Miura. The Miura pushed things on in my mind, or as far as I've understood it. I wasn't there at the time. But do you know what I mean? So therefore I just hold it in such regard, and also the value and everything. I'm like, it's a freaking Miura. If a Miura turns up somewhere, I don't care that it's got a Lamborghini badge on it. It's a Miura.
Yeah, like I said, I'd go, oh yeah, that's but I wouldn't be gravitated to it, you know. And
really?
Talking about, manufacturers stepping other manufacturers on, that's what they all do, by the way. So yeah, Lambo back in the day, they may have kicked Ferrari up the bum, but don't forget, McLaren done that 12 years ago with the
MP412C
thing.
Yeah.
And
we always forget it had the MP4 bit at the front.
Yeah,
it's the 12C now.
And then like Porsche have had kicks up the bum, and then we go back to the big German manufacturers. Mercedes, BMW and Audi. They've all had kicks up the bum by all each other. They all drive each other on. It's all being...
And by the Koreans these days.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I totally get it. But for me, yeah, Miura was one of those ones that, well, you can imagine. You can imagine what I was like in that moment.
Did you fit in it?
I actually did. But,
Really?
I mean, similar to an event, I didn't fit well. And I actually said that on camera. I was like, I immediately know that I'm in a proper Lambo again because I don't really fit. They're just built for small Italian men, really.
Back then they were.
Still today, apart from the Revuelto.
Yeah.
The only negative, which I'm just going to say now so that people are aware when they get to the video, understandably, I do get it, but Lambo gave me an escort vehicle for that. As in, like, what's it called? I had to follow a US Performante. I mean, it is a €4 million classic car from their museum.
I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either. But...
Suppose they let you go out in it.
But I am there to drive the car, and it is for media and content creation. It was a little flat. Like, I would drive the Miura around a car park and be happy. But for content, it just meant that I was following a Urus at 30 kilometers an hour for 20 minutes, which was a little bit... Do I sound like a bit of a dick saying that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do I? Okay.
Did you have to make a video on it? Why didn't you just go and drive it and be happy that you drove it?
Because it's my job.
It was bolted on the end. It was a bonus point at the end. So instead of... I get what you mean, and it is your job. You're absolutely spot on. But actually, and you boys do it all the time, you don't always have to have the cameras on. You can turn them off. Do you know what I mean? You could have just enjoyed that yourself at 30 mile an hour following an Urus.
There were lots of moments I did, and I really did just enjoy the moment. Don't get me wrong, it's a moment I will never forget. And I did get that across on camera a bit, but I think if I'd come back here and sat down and said to everyone, I drove a Miura at the weekend, and I said, but I didn't film it, I think people would be like, well, what are you doing with your life? Isn't that your job? It'd be like you saying, oh yeah, I bought a Miura, but I decided not to sell it.
Well,
Isn't it your job?
Before.
Isn't it your job to buy and sell
I've
stuff?
done that before.
Have you? Bought
No.
cars that you meant to sell and then just kept them?
Yeah.
Really? Give me an example.
The Escort Cosworth, for one.
So you bought it as stock and decided to keep it?
Yeah. There's been cars down the years.
Really?
100%.
Because you've liked them more than you thought you would, or because value-wise they've done something?
Bit of both.
Okay.
Bit of both. The Escort Cosworth was like a childhood car of mine, and it come in, and I thought, I'm not selling that. I'm going to keep it. And there's lots of dealers up and down the country that do that, by the way. As in, they get a car come in and they go, no, I'm not selling it. I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. That's a nice bit of kit.
Yeah. For whatever reason. Sentimental value. For whatever reason.
So much sentimental value that you did actually sell it in the end.
I did it. Yeah.
Profit always weighs out.
Double my money on it.
Yeah, profit outweighs Tony's sentimental value at any point. But anyway, it was an awesome trip. So thank you to Lamborghini, and thank you to them for allowing me to go and check out the Revuelto after we were so misguided.
Surprised they let you drive that Miura at 30 mile an hour.
No, they were absolute legends. And actually, I had an awesome team. A guy called Pietro, who's a racing driver with Lambo, really helped me out on the day. And also a guy called Jonathan helped me film. I had a really good time.
Lovely.
I had a really, really good time. So big up Lambo flying that flag. But that brings an end to this week's episode. Brought you up to speed. So yeah, all that content is still to come on the main channel. We'll be back with you next week, just before, I guess, the big European adventures start. We've got a couple of themed episodes coming up, including Tony sort of talked on it, spoke about it briefly. We're going to talk about rising car values and I guess financing. Also some other topics around SUVs and bits and bobs. So stay tuned. Subscribe now if you're watching here on YouTube. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any future episodes. If you want to join in with our live streams and the live chat that's been taking place today as we record these sessions, head over to recast.tv/behind the glass. If you want to follow Tony in the meantime, he's at Tony Gravel with Car Sales on most social media platforms, and I'm at Seen Through Glass on most social media platforms. And yeah, we'll be back with you for another episode next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.